Hi, welcome to Warrior Commission Now, where we talk about practical ways to live your commission in God. And this is Sharon Rudolph, and I'm Christine Caston. And Sharon and I are basically, we're just pushing record in the middle of a conversation that we're just like, hey, this is good. Let's share this. Let's invite people into our conversation. And as part of the Warrior Commission, we have these amazing opportunities to really see God moving in a way that brings transformation in people's lives. And then part of what we do and part of what the Warrior Commission is about is helping people in the transitions that happen when God brings transformation in our lives. So one of those things that happens is you have to face yourself when God brings you to that place of transformation. And so when you face yourself, Sharon, you want to talk a little bit about kind of what that means to you and maybe describe it a little bit more so those that are sitting at our table with us today have a better understanding of that.
Yeah, when I think of the process of facing yourself, I really see it as becoming who you are instead of being who you thought you were supposed to be.
Yeah.
And there is an embracing of God's design in our life. There's an embracing of identity and destiny. There's an embracing of what makes you happy and what is satisfaction for you. And instead of agreeing with what the shoulds and supposed tos are in your life, because the shoulds and supposed tos will cause you to feel like you're drowning.
Right. Or even what the world says makes you happy or will satisfy you, but truly what it is to be happy in your relationship with God and what that looks like and that satisfaction that comes through being who you are in Him.
Yes. And I love it's the in Him piece, because when you walk with Jesus, the world is out there telling you that the things that really delight you when you walk with Jesus aren't what you're supposed to want.
Mm-hmm.
And yet when you walk with Jesus, you realize smelling the roses is delightful, and helping somebody else and putting them first is satisfying. And all these pieces of life in God are real. Mm-hmm. And they're significant, but there is attention going on for our attention,
yes,
for our focus. Yeah. And I believe it requires an intentionality to look at that and step into that instead of just keeping the peace.
Yeah.
And just settling for status quo because you don't like the tension, even though the tension's still there, right?
It doesn't ever really truly go away. But I think that's part of, I think when God gives us an invitation to step into that transformation process, we have a choice. You know, he will not just transform us regardless of, right. of our desire. We choose it. And so we have all of these opportunities where he gives us an invitation into transformation, and we say yes. And then before we can really pour that into others and to give to others from that place, God changes the internal territory, is what we call it, but the internal part of ourselves that isn't truly aligned with Him, whether it's because it's wounded and it's pulled back and it's kind of stopped, it's kind of stuck in that place, or it's the place of upgrade into maturity. That is maybe a different perspective, a different way of seeing how God sees. And I think, as we were kind of before we pushed play and said, oh, let's record this, kind of thing. You were talking about the road to Damascus, and you were talking about Paul and really, what was going on with that. Like he was passionately pursuing what he thought God wanted. And yet he was so off the mark, in that place. So share a little bit about what you were thinking about that story, that biblical story of Paul. Who was Paul at the time.
Yeah. I just think it's incredible how much God loved this man.
Mm-hmm.
And within our community, we use the phrase, God allows in his wisdom what he could have prevented in his power. And he could have had Saul recognize Jesus and become a follower of Jesus before he did.
Mm-hmm.
But that didn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
God knew the perfect time, the perfect moment to bring to light to Saul, what his issue was.
Mm-hmm.
And what was keeping him from God.
Mm-hmm.
And he showed it to him. And then God brings in a man to have a conversation with Saul. God, and his name's Ananias, and he comes, and I love it. Ananias goes, God, don't you know this guy's killing Christians?
Yeah, like you're putting me in harm's way here, God. What are you thinking?
But God brings this man, and Ananias brings a capacity to Saul. His name's not different yet. To Saul, to believe that, yes, God's going to do this thing in me. Mm-hmm. God really does love me that much. Mm-hmm. And he gets a new name and gets to see again. And then he goes on a journey to figure out who he is all over. Mm-hmm. And when you look at his story, he really doesn't do ministry for years and years. I forget if it was 10 or 15 years before you see Paul doing ministry, because he had to figure out, who am I?
Yeah.
Who am I?
He had, I love this. I love the whole, like the picture each aspect of the story brings, right? Yeah. He's operating as Saul, who, if you look back in the Bible, Saul, King Saul, was someone who had gone off the mark. He had, right. he was trying to make things happen out of his own will, right? Yeah. And then you got David, who's a passionate pursuer of God's heart, right? He's after God's heart, right? So when you see Saul, it's the same thing. He's passionately pursuing what he thinks should happen. And really he's in performance. He's doing for God. He's striving hard. Right. He's taking out these people that he thinks are contrary to what he knows God to be, but he didn't have a revelation of the love of God in that place. All he had was a revelation of how he had to work hard for God. And I think that's such a great parallel to the difference between being someone who's performing for God or trying to make God, earn God's love, to make God love them, versus someone who recognizes God's love. The scales fall off. We can see the love of God. And Ananias represents God's love going and saying the scales will fall off. And really it was the beginning of Saul becoming Paul, the new identity that he was really going to walk in. That was truly the identity that God had for him all along. Right.
But one of the things I love about how God does things is he does give us visuals. He gives us pictures. He gives us story. And so in the story, Saul gets knocked off a horse and he's blind.
Right.
It's terrifying.
He gets knocked off his high horse.
It had to have been painful.
Yes.
Right. And then he's sitting for 2+ days in this place. I've done something wrong. Mm-hmm. It's a painful place to realize I'm off the mark. There needs to be something different. There has to be a shift. Mm-hmm. And I love how God orchestrated this for Saul to a point. Jesus had an encounter with him. Mm-hmm. Jesus talked to him. Mm-hmm. I'm the one you're persecuting, right? In such a way that Saul knew in his knower, okay, this is a real deal, and I've got to deal with it. Mm-hmm. So when Ananias came, Saul was ready. Yeah. Saul was ready to let go of what he needed to let go of and step into the new. Mm-hmm. And I think I think people are so afraid of our Damascus Road moments because there's usually more than one. God's kind. He doesn't put too much in one box. They're little. And but I think we're so afraid of that moment. We don't give ourselves permission to receive it. We don't give ourselves permission to be excited about what's on the other side. Mm-hmm. Because you and I have both had our Damascus Road moments.
Many of them, yes.
And
more to come.
You get to that other side, and it's so good and it's so beautiful, mm-hmm. that you know that all of it was worth it.
Yeah.
All of it was worth it. Mm-hmm. And we don't have to say it was fun, but it was worth it.
Well, and it's usually not, initially it's not fun. Then it becomes fun, but initially it's not, because you are having to look within, and I think, again, back to that picture, when Paul was blinded, he had nowhere to look but within.
Yes.
He was alone in a dark room, so to speak,
right,
of his own self.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, of his own self. And there was self-assessment going on in that place. And I think so often we fear more what could be within than what we may battle on the outside.
Right.
And we love to champion other people, but we don't always choose to do the work that is part of the process of our growth. We want maturity. We want to see anointing increase. We want to see our gifts strengthen. We want all this stuff, but we just want it to be like God snaps his fingers and it happens. And that's not how it works. And I think one of the things that I feel like is part of that is because compassion grows in us when we are brave enough and courageous enough to face the journey that God has for us with him in the healing and maturing process.
Yes.
Why won't you forgive? Well, I won't forgive because they're wrong. Okay. But it has nothing to do with them. It has to do with you. It has to do with your heart. It has to do with forgiving 70 times 7, and releasing the hold that unforgiveness keeps on you.
Right.
So that you can be free and step into the place where freedom is possible for you to grow and develop and increase in compassion. And I think that's part of the maturing process, that so many times we want the result without going through the process,
Yeah.
And I think we were talking about this earlier, Sharon, that with every invitation that God gives us to go into maturity, there's also an out. There's an option that keeps us where we are. Like he says, would you like to step into more? I want to walk with you in this place. I want to be with you, and I want to teach you and help you step into more freedom, or you can stay where you are.
Right. Right. And God is so kind.
Mm-hmm.
It's his loving kindnesses are new every morning. He is so kind. Yeah. And he does let us choose. And he's kind enough. He'll bring us back to this point again.
Again and again and again. And How about now?
And he will, in a sense, he breaks it up into littler pieces. Yeah. So if you don't say yes now, he will break it up and you'll be able, he's just so kind.
Yeah. He is very kind.
Because I know people who beat themselves up with, I should have. So even if you haven't before, know that God's still in the middle of your journey, and the yes is always on hand.
Yeah. And I almost wish we could take away the should haves, have tos. Yeah, because it becomes obligation and not choice.
Right.
And there's a big difference between doing something because you feel like you have to, and doing something because you choose to.
Yes.
And I know that that the whole idea of preferring one to another, to truly be able to do that, we do have to, we get to take that internal territory. We get to accept the invitation that God has on hand so that we can step into the more. And there's something about our perception of when we see it as an invitation and we see it as what God is giving us. It's a gift to be able to step into a fullness that raises us up as maturing sons and daughters of God.
Right.
You know, we're all sons and daughters of God, but to be a maturing son or daughter of God means that you're able to really carry forward your Father's will, you know, and to be able to carry it forward with his heart and with his nature.
Yes. And in that place, you're creating space for other people. We get the blessing. You do the work, you get the blessing, you get the freedom, you get the depth of relationship with God, and you have more to give away. You have more to, to give away and to help other people with. So I think a good question for today would be, what's God giving you an opportunity to say yes to? Mm-hmm. And how has he been navigating your life to this point today? Mm-hmm. And what does he have for you in it? Mm-hmm. And how might he want to support you as you face your life and as you make the choice to step into more maturity? Mm-hmm. Because it's always worth it. Always mm-hmm. worth it. Mm-hmm. So we want to thank, and almost forgot, we want to encourage you, if you want to be a part of a community to support you on your journey and to help you see God's heart and to be able to know who you are and who he is, because the journey involves both. The more we know who God is, the more we understand ourselves. The more we understand ourselves, the more we see who God really is for us. If you want to be a part of that kind of community, join the Warrior Commission or come check us out on the website. Start there. Check out our website, the Warrior Commission. I don't want to get the cart before the horse. So come check out the website, thewarriorcommission.com. See who we are, and maybe we'd be a good fit for your journey. Mm-hmm. So thanks for joining.
And we'd love to have you be a part. We'd love to link arms with you and journey together in that process of our own growth. You know, we're not there, our own growth and your growth as well. So we'd love to see you there.